On August 21st, 1986, a lake in Cameroon called Lake Nyos turned into a silent killer overnight. Without a warning, a cloud of carbon dioxide burst out of the lake and rolled downhill into nearby villages because the carbon dioxide is more dense than air. And since this occurred at night, over 1,700 people suffocated in their sleep, and all of the livestock in the area died. But how exactly would this have happened? And should you be worried if you live next to a lake? There are three main factors that lead to this, and this type of event is called a limnic eruption. It's an eruption of a CO2 bubble from deep in a lake. Firstly, obviously, you have to have a source of CO2, and so the lake has to be near a volcano to source that carbon dioxide. Secondly, you have to have really, really deep water, and it has to be very still as to not disturb and essentially burp up this carbon dioxide to release it. Not only that, but it has to be deep enough that the water on top creates enough pressure to keep that carbon dioxide in solution in the water. Similar to how the pressure in your soda can keeps your carbon dioxide in your soda in the liquid until you release the pressure. And the CO2 goes into dissolution and makes it nice and bubbly. And then thirdly, you have to have really good stratification. You have a column of warm water that stays on top and a column of cold water that stays underneath. And most lakes go through a natural mixing process where the warm water on top gets cold in the winter and then comes down and the top layer and the bottom layer switch. And that's how you get natural mixing with shallower lakes that go through more seasonal changes. But because this is a warmer area and this is a deeper lake, that doesn't really happen. And so you had this perfect mixture of a lake being near a volcano, being incredibly deep, fitting all of these factors to allow for CO2 to be trapped over a really long period of time. And in fact, local legend in the area warned against people settling in lower areas. They were supposed to be settling up in higher areas near the lake because there was local lore that bad things happen to people that are in lower areas. And that might be for a reason. So over decades, this lake basically trapped CO2 and accrued more and more CO2, and it basically became this Coke bottle with a really hard cap on the surface. But different than your Coke bottle, it kept injecting CO2 in it and became incredibly pressurized. So what caused the release of this CO2? Can't say for sure that it was an earthquake, but that's definitely a contender. Scientists also observed that there may have been a rock slide into the lake, which definitely would have been enough to disturb water deeper down in the lake, but people aren't sure whether or not that was caused by this eruption or it caused the eruption. Some people have also suggested maybe wind or some other disturbance. There needs to be some disturbance, but regardless of what the source was, something did disturb the CO2 in the bottom of this lake and allowed it to erupt. And this essentially exploded this CO2 pocket at the bottom of this lake. And the lake dropped 3 meters. So that was one of the first things the survivor noticed when he came out of his house, was that the waterfall was silent. So not only were there no bugs or birds and no sounds of animals, but there wasn't even the sound of a waterfall, because that's how much CO2 escaped. The total amount of CO2 that actually did escape was 1.2 cubic kilometers worth of CO2, which imagine that. That's roughly the volume of the amount of rain that goes into Lake Tahoe every year, or the average volume of an alpine lake. It would have weighed roughly the same amount as the average cruise ship. So that amount of CO2 came out and rolled down the hill, and there was actually a wind. It knocked some people down, and it rolled down these valleys like an invisible tsunami. If you do live near a lake that fits all of the factors, you might want to move. I'm the Cosmic Geologist, and if you like stories like these, hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next video.